Hello, everybody. I'm kara-mcnabb, and I am here with Nancy Despres today. And we're going to just talk a little bit about her work as a holistic nurse, and we'll see what else emerges. And then she is going to spend some time guiding you through what she's calling how to make your mind work for you. So I'm excited to hear what that is all about once we get there. So, hi, Nancy.
Hey, Kara, thanks so much. This is fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have an interaction with a
I
human.
know, right?
Even if it's just on Zoom. Yeah.
How have things been for you? How has this whole coronavirus and all of the shutdowns been affecting you personally? And how has it been affecting your business, if at all?
Well, interestingly enough, after 16 years, I just probably in February, the middle of February, started dating. So it's been really fascinating to have a few dates and then kind of transition over to dating kind of like this, like Zoom and FaceTime. So it's been interesting because it's been like back to old-fashioned dating. So it's been
What does
for me.
old-fashioned dating mean for you?
Well, you're getting to know each other on a whole different level. Like there's no physical contact, right? So you really have to get to know each other. And so it's been all about conversation, which has been really, really good. So for me, I mean, it's been a big plus for me in that sense. So I've been able to create a deeper relationship with the person I've been dating. So I like it. My kids are sort of scattered. They're with their significant others. So I've been by myself with the dog and the cat. So that's been interesting in and of itself. But I don't mind being alone. I actually can keep myself pretty busy. So it's been a good thing. Business wise has been interesting, but I've always wanted to move more towards online, and I do work part-time online. So I've actually been doing my consults, and I do my hypnotherapy online as well, and it works actually amazing. And I moved to an online platform for nutritional supplements so people can get what they need. So it's really been a different pace, but kind of the same thing, and yet interesting, because I'm a person, being in-person person. So like my clients, I love to give them a hug. I'm kind of a hands-on person. So that's probably affected me in a way that I don't really care for. But it's been good. It's been interesting. It's been certainly a growth opportunity for me. So I'm embracing it.
Wonderful. So one of the things that I know about the work that you do is you do incorporate biofeedback, right? So I would imagine that you can't use that in your work. Are there other things that help you to kind of assess what's happening with people? And
I'll send people like a very detailed health appraisal questionnaire, and then we'll have a conversation. And then I can, I do some muscle testing and some pendulum work to actually help, kind of, narrow down supplements and things that are good for them. But we also work with the ideas as well, their mind, and that's where the hypnosis comes in. So we can do a complete whole mind-body approach.
Okay. So why don't you share with people what it is that you do? So you started off, you worked as a nurse for a few decades and then transitioned into holistic health consulting. And it sounds like you incorporate lots of different modalities into what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, so I started off working in a very, very, very busy open heart ward. And so I did all aspects of pre-op, post-op, in the surgical suite, in the ICU, and it was a really, really fast pace. And through the course of my working there, I ended up getting married and having 3 children, and probably like most women, literally burnt myself out and got into actually some pretty horrendous anxiety and panic attacks to the point where I couldn't leave my house. And I went to my traditional doctor, who at the time, they only recommend what they know, right? So it was, they recommended Xanax and Prozac, which I really didn't want to do. So I just kind of fought the feelings and finally found someone who did what I do now, the biofeedback. And nutritionally, I was really depleted from working and stress and nursing and giving birth and all that. So I didn't have a lot of good.
Did you look specifically for somebody who did biofeedback, or did you just happen to
No,
encounter
no,
somebody and discover
it
it?
was one of those. It was one of those. Happened to find somebody said, "Well, you might want to try this," and it was just so out of the radar at that time. It was so like different. I was like, "Well, why not?" You know, I don't know what to do, and so it just all made sense to me at the
Okay.
time because she was telling me exactly what I was feeling. All the
Mm,
symptoms, like my digestion was off, my nervous system was off, I was fatigued, I was having blood sugar swings. You know, those were all the kinds of questions. You know, I wasn't going to the bathroom, I wasn't eliminating properly. And those were all the questions that, like, my regular doctor, which, I mean, as good as he was, he never took the time to ask me any of those questions. So I really felt like for the first time, I'd been heard, I'd been validated. You know, it was like somebody was taking me seriously and they spent time with me. And so through the course of, you know, working with her, you know, I restructured my diet, did some homeopathics, got some fatty acids, got good protein on board, took some enzymes to break down the protein. Because if you're not breaking it down, you're not getting amino acids to build good neurotransmitters and stabilize my blood sugar. And I was like, it was like watering a dead plant, literally. And
mhm.
so I had like a renewed interest in life. And I thought, oh my gosh, I want to do this. So I flew to Salt Lake City, you know, bought the system, learned the program, came back. I was only going to do it, you know, just for my family because I thought, wow, what a great resource this is. But the program kind of dictated that you practiced, quote unquote, on 50 people. So I was like pulling in neighbors and, you know, friends of neighbors and things like that. And pretty soon it became a business.
Okay.
So that's when I started doing it part time.
Cool. So for those people who are wondering what biofeedback is, can you describe that?
Well, it's like electroacupuncture. So we've got meridian points. There's like 800 points on the body, but we just use the beginning and the end points, which are on the hands and feet of the body. So I can get like by measuring them, literally someone will hold like a brass bar and I have a stylus, which I touch points on those hands and feet. It gives me a reading. And that reading corresponds to either a balanced reading, a degenerative reading, or an inflamed reading. And so from that point, I get what I call like the helicopter reading of how the energy is moving in the body. From there, we can go in and look for, you know, what is putting it off. Is it food sensitivities? Is it bacteria, viruses, fungus? You know, do we need enzymes? How's the liver working? Are the kidneys detoxifying? So it's just really a pretty cool way to look at the body. So you're looking at it energetically.
Okay.
So you're looking at what's, you know, kind of set to manifest.
Okay. And then from there, you can also use it to figure out what's going to work best for that person's body,
Yep,
right?
yep. You can
Okay.
discern what's going to make the shift, what
Mhm.
where they need the support the most.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Very
So
cool.
it's been fun.
I think the only time I think I've experienced biofeedback with you,
Mm-mm.
I think I have just once before with another practitioner, and I don't know if this is something that yours does too, but it read back a belief system too, and when she read it back to me, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, how do you know that? Because it was so specific and so precise to me. And it is something that I had been conscious of and aware of and have been working on. Um, does your biofeedback machine work across that spectrum as well? Or is that something that you incorporate in other aspects with people?
Mine does have that component in belief systems. Yes, we can even go in and do generational things as well. I do use it if people, and I think it depends on how much information people want, what are they open to. You know, not everybody's looking for that, but if it comes up, I'm happy to do it. Um, Other ways I get to it is through my hypnosis because I like to do regression to getting back to the reason, root, the core, the issue exists. I feel like that takes the mind, takes the consciousness out of it. We go into the subconscious and then we can ask directly and get a lot of good information, because we can go in and find out the core, like when it first started. So I
Yeah.
feel like that is really super helpful.
Mm-hmm. I have often wondered about things where you're just kind of given this
Mm-hmm.
thing and made aware of it versus allowing the person to kind of explore for their own. So in my own practice, that's essentially what I'm doing, is using a mind body dialogue to help people connect to the physical sensations that they have, and maybe connect to some of the emotions and the stories that come up around that, to identify limiting belief patterns,
Mm-hmm.
and to, you know, maybe just take like a Louise Hay book, for instance.
Right.
Are you familiar with Louise Hay?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So for those who aren't, Louise Hay has a whole bunch of symptoms listed out, and then next to that, a belief or an affirmation to say. So essentially telling you what your symptom might be rooted in, but that robs somebody of that entire experience of learning what that is for
Mm-hmm.
themselves and taking meaning out of it, really. Um, so
Right. I
I
like
like
when
your
people can
approach.
draw,
Oh,
when they can draw their own conclusions,
totally.
that's gold, right? When
Hmm.
they come to it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell me more about the hypnosis that you do.
Well,
What drew you to that, and what do you use it for with your clients?
Well, even when I was working in the hospital, I was always probably one of my primary questions were, why some people, can recover, why some people have complications. It was more like I was just really fascinated and very curious on the psychology of illness and well-being, and, why some people got better, why some people kept coming back in the hospital. And yeah, so that prompted me, and I've always been very open-minded. So when this program and the opportunity to study with Marissa Peer came along, it was like I finally felt like I had the answers to the questions, because it combines. And you know what? Honestly, Kara, I don't like the word hypnosis. I think it conjures up all kinds of, you know, stage magician kind of things. So I just prefer to kind of call it deep relaxation, but people know it as hypnosis, but and hypnotherapy. And there's actually a lot of credible medical supporting data, because our minds are super powerful. And this particular process uses hypnosis, or taking people into the deep alpha state, which you can bypass the critical mind and get right into the subconscious and ask it questions and give it like the correct information. It also uses cognitive behavioral therapy and neurolinguistic programming. So it's like, in a sense, I say it's like I'm a brain surgeon or a mind surgeon. I can go in and extract, with your help, all the things that don't serve you. We can remove them and then put in what you want. So you can actually use your mind to work for you. And
Okay.
so who do I work with? Well, since I'm a nurse and I'm fascinated with, dis-ease and illness, I do work on, I do a lot of work with anxiety, because obviously I'm very familiar with anxiety. I lived that for a while. But I've used it on anything. Let's see what I've used it on. Some infertility. I've done chronic fatigue, autoimmune, fibromyalgia, because there's always a mind piece, a belief piece. And when you can get at that, pull it out and kind of extract it, you can kind of help the person get control and responsibility, and they can literally kind of collapse that illness,
Okay.
which is
What do you,
fascinating.
what do you mean by pull it out or extract it?
Well, it's like you shine the light on it, and it's like cleaning out a closet. You're taking things out. So in the session, we're like taking out ideas, belief systems that were imprinted or given to us, between, a lot of times even pre-birth to around the age of 7, 8, 9. And those become the filter through which all of our experience are drawn to us. So that person, what happens when you're younger, you're at the effect of what goes on around you, through you, over you, conversations you hear, meanings you make out of things, and those set the tone for, what you're going to believe and what you're going to allow into your life. So we'll extract them, we'll look at them together, that my client can decide if that's something that they want to keep. Um, and we can literally alchemize it into something that can actually move them forward.
Okay. Do you have any stories that you can share, even your own personal ones, or just a really interesting thing that maybe came up for somebody that helped to shift whatever disease
Hmm.
state that they were in?
Yes. Let's see, boy, a few of them I can tell you. Who do I want to
Share
pick?
away.
Right. Well, one particular client came in with um, probably prostate, possibly even very low level prostate cancer, and doing the regression. I always ask, what's the reason, the root, the core of this issue, and why are you experiencing it? And I take them back and regress them, and it was a tremendous, tremendous release of anger towards a very, very, very abusive parent. So this gentleman actually was able to literally physically cry and shake and literally discharge all of that emotion, and really create something more empowering for himself. And it's interesting that his PSA numbers kept subsequently going down and down and down and down. Yeah. So if
Right,
you think of
right.
where that prostate is, that chakra area, it's like, that there's power that's been given away and been suppressed. And, when we suppress anything, that creates, just a big imbalance, and lots of heat, is stored, and he was able to discharge that. So that was a really, really cool thing, I thought.
Cool. I love hearing stories like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my cat has joined us here. This is
Oh,
Bear.
yay. Okay.
um, okay, thank you for sharing that. So
Yeah.
it sound did he process through all of that in a single
Oh,
session, or
yeah.
was
Well,
there?
my sessions are usually about minimally, like they're like 2.5 hours long. So there's a tremendous amount of time to process it, to reframe it, to come out of it feeling like, yeah, that's done, that's over with.
Okay. Do you see some people where it might not work so quickly or work so well for?
Well, I think you always have to be willing.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of what I do is I also combine like mindset coaching. So I give them homework to do, and then my coaching is about moving the ball forward for them. So you have to, I hate to say it, but you can't stay in a victim mindset and get the result. So it's literally being willing to come out of that victim mindset, take responsibility, which is your ability to respond, and be in charge of your own life, like rewrite your own story and be willing to step into that.
Hmm. Okay. So can you explain what you mean by victim mindset?
Well, when, it's like, for a perfect example is, why is this happening to me as opposed to why is this happening for me? Um, just being able to not let be like a cork bobbing in the water, not being at the effect, but being the cause in your life, and being the one to stand up and say, okay, this is happening to me. What's the message? What's the meaning? How can I use what I have to build myself up and take myself to the next level?
Mm. Okay, thank you for that. Another thing that came to mind to me today, as I was thinking about this, is something that I heard you say a few years ago. Um, and I don't know if there's anything that will come from this, maybe
Okay.
just a story, but you said, and I might have it quoted wrong too, but one day you just randomly said in the office, I love money and money loves me. And that just really struck me. And it came back
You
to
like
me
that?
earlier this year in a way where I remembered that thing that Nancy said. And
Yeah.
then I realized, like, maybe a week later, like, oh, I totally distorted what Nancy said. But I
Yeah.
took what you said and I made it mine in a way that had meaning for me. I don't remember what
Right.
it was now.
Right. Right.
Um, but I always just loved hearing that from you. There was like, I don't know, like it surprised me in some
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you have anything to respond to
Well, it's like
with
the
that?
audacity of her to say that, right? Why? And then who is she to say that, right?
Hmm.
But it's energy, right? And money, it comes through people from spirit or the universe or God, comes from them through us and to bless our lives. And it's just a beautiful energy. And it's an energy of contribution and gratitude. And money loves attention. Money is spiritual. And, I did my own work around it. And I even I do hypnotherapy sessions around wealth rewiring, because we pick up ideas. I had so many conflicting ideas about money when I grew up. My parents were divorced. My mom was more of the, cut the coupons and don't buy anything till it was on sale and put herself last. And where my dad was, very successful. So literally bouncing back between those two mindsets, I had a tremendous amount of confusion around money. And it's just energy, and it's meant to be a blessing in our lives. And so, I did a lot of work around that. And I can actually say that without feeling, bad about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So cool. Something that you said reminded me of what it shifted me into was something around like the attention to money,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
and noticing, at one point in my life, I was very, 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 very conscious of money, like paying attention to every dime that I spent. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
really good at calculating everything in my head. And then I
Mm-hmm.
swung to another end at some point where I was just kind of like, yeah, money, you know,
Right.
and didn't pay so much attention to it anymore. And then,
Mm-hmm.
so I was once here, and then I was way over here at this end of the spectrum, and really trying to come like more to a healthy balance or healthy
Right.
medium with
Mm-hmm.
that. But I realized that one of those things for me was, at least at this point, I wasn't really paying attention to my
Mm-hmm.
money. So what if I started paying more attention to my money, just in terms of, instead of waiting so long to do my accounting practices,
Mm-hmm.
or setting more of a budget for my personal spending, and keeping track of things in that way. So it
Mm-hmm.
was interesting to, whatever, you inspired me to think, which led to that, and
Oh,
then how
cool.
it kind of shifted the way that I was like
Mm-hmm.
relating with money to an extent.
Nice.
So,
Nice. I always have people do this fun exercise. I'll say, if money was your boyfriend, what would it say about you?
if money was my boyfriend, what would it say about me?
Yeah. Like, how does she treat you? Does she only want you when she needs you?
Let
Do
me
you?
think about this one for a minute for myself.
How do you
Um,
contain it? Is it jammed up in an old wallet? Is it organized? Are the bills, facing the right way? Is it organized? Is it, what's the attention you give to it?
Oh dear, this brings up so many things. I'm thinking about my wallet right now, which is
Yep.
a little pouch with a bunch of stuff in it. And every time I
Right.
try to pay for anything, there's like lots of cash here and lots of cash over here. And like, let
Mm-hmm.
me find my ones. And like,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
it's not very organized.
Yep. All
Um,
right. We know where you're going to put your attention now.
well, that's right. Thank you for that, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great questions. I'm going to write those down and
Mm-hmm.
spend a little bit more time with those later,
Right.
on my own, so I'm not giving away all of my
All
secrets
your secrets. Yeah.
to whoever's watching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, cool. Another thing that, always piqued my interest from you is archetypes.
Mm.
I remember you talking about archetypes, I think in business at one
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And archetype work has always, um, been an interest to me. It has been a thing that I didn't understand, because there's all of these different, archetype systems,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Yep.
And then in one of my classes, maybe like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, one of my teachers described archetype in a particular way where it finally like clicked with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I just love talking about archetypes with people,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of see like, all right, is my understanding of what I heard there, is that similar? Is that shared in a way, that other people are understanding it too?
Yeah.
So
Well,
archetypes. Okay, go ahead.
I'll just say that I use it in, I actually took a class and got certified, a while ago in something called branding with archetypes, like bringing your personal archetype into your business brand. And there's really kind of a fun quiz that you can take. And I'll just tell you for mine, I picked two. For me, what comes up is the alchemist and the sage. And it's so interesting on how like that fits perfectly with my business, because alchemy is, transformation, and sage is using wisdom. So I bring both those components into my business, because I think that's my natural style. I love like big ideas, philosophical ideas. I love to expand. I love to grow. And I love the ideas of, transformation, like what an alchemist would do. It would take something and transform it into gold. And we can use our experience, even the perceived bad ones, if we shift them the right way, if we look at them the right way, they can be gold for us. They can be the fuel that moves us forward.
Okay. Is that something that people can find more information on or take that assessment themselves?
They probably it's not on my website at all.
Okay.
They just have to directly contact me, which they could do,
Okay.
and I can send it to them. And yeah, it's a fascinating quiz, and it's always spot on with people.
Okay.
You don't need to
Cool.
use it so much for your business. You could just have an intention and fill the quiz out, and do
Okay.
it that way. Yeah.
Okay. I want to take it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that my teacher had shared with me that helped with my understanding was using pretty simple roles that
Mm-hmm.
we generally take in life. Some of us step into a role more often than others. So like mother archetype or father archetype, um, king or queen archetype, or god, goddess, masculine, feminine. Um, and what really stuck out to me was thinking about stepping into practitioner archetype.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this way of being for me where I feel myself. It's a subtle difference when I am in practitioner mode versus when I'm just in regular kara mode. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's all of these different things that are happening that I find to be quite fascinating. Like, okay, in this space, it's like I have access to absolutely everything that I need. And I'm like so connected with my core self.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in other spaces, I'm not necessarily always right there in that place of like having the answer right here, or having the thing to get to that person to the
Mm-hmm.
answer that they're looking for. Um, and taking that and kind of looking at other people too, um, and seeing where like, oh, sometimes there's discomfort in this friendship, and realizing like, oh, that person's not stepping out of that archetype that is serving them as a practitioner or maybe as a mother. Whereas then I just feel like I'm being like this client or this patient all the time in the friendship. Or I feel like this person is mothering me all the time. And that's not the relationship that I want. It's a friendship. So there's like a mutual ground there. Does that make sense in terms of how you understand archetypes to work?
Well, and I think just to build on that too, I think there's certain identities that we have, and certainly I know, like, I think we're all really multiple personalities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just different situations and circumstances, and people trigger different roles to come out. Um, I mean, I know that I'm different when I'm with you, than I'm different than when I'm with a client, than when I'm with my kids, and when I'm with the person I'm dating. So I think we have that ability to shift into different roles and different aspects of ourselves. Certainly we have different, we dress differently, we speak differently. So I think it's all fascinating. My typical role, also is I'm a nurturer. I've been born a nurturer. Um, that for me, I had to realize that was an aspect of myself. I think that probably was overdone to the point where I was almost like a pleaser and a people pleaser. And I had to really give a lot of that up in order to heal from that anxiety too. So I had to more step into what do I want, what's good for me, instead of living from the vantage point of how can I fix what's good for everybody else, and putting
Yeah.
myself in the back seat. So that was an identity and a personality of mine that, I mean, that's more in the background. But I had to work a lot to put that away, because it was ultimately, that was something that as a child that was necessary for survival. It was a coping strategy. But as we bring those coping strategies forward, they can really harm us. And that's what I think one of the reasons I got into anxiety so bad is I was running like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to fix and please and care for everybody else except me. So that was, again, one of those survival patterns that helped me cope as a child, but eventually led to my destruction. And that's what I find, like when the hypnotherapy and when people want to get, well, they've got some unhealthy patterns that are going on. And, my gosh, we've got to find them and interrupt them and release them.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like you've stepped into this place, this pattern, this archetype, or however you want to identify it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you forget to step out. You can be there sometimes, but when
Right.
you're always there,
Right.
there's the high likelihood that you're going to overdo it and it's going to start harming you or your relationships
Mm-hmm.
in some capacity.
Yeah. It's like observing yourself, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
is this good for me is always my question. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 It didn't used to be.
Well, I'm glad that's your question nowadays.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Way to get there. All right. So you talked about teaching us something called how to make your mind work for you.
Right.
So do you want to transition into that right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. Or
Okay.
rules of the mind. Because did you know that your mind has rules? So we'll just
Okay.
kind of
Tell
call
us
this
more
like
about.
mind 101. So
Okay.
there's some things that your mind loves. It loves repetition, because you've heard, and I'm sure you've heard, that we run a lot of times the same thoughts. Like we can have 60,000 thoughts a day, and a lot of times they're the same exact thoughts, and a lot of times they run on a loop, and so that gets it reinforced. um, your mind is an amplifier, which means whatever you focus on grows. Another rule is your mind always does exactly what it thinks you want it to do. And it does what it thinks is in your very best interest, because it's designed to protect you and to keep you safe. So it's a tribal prehistoric mechanism. Its job is to come up with resistance to anything you dislike, and that's how it keeps you safe. It keeps you with what's familiar. So, like, perfect example, if my job is killing me, well, you'll manifest some type of. I worked in open heart surgery, so I saw a lot of that happening. Your mind's job is not to make you happy. It's to help you to survive. And it really doesn't care if you're happy. It just cares if you survive, because survival means you can procreate and move the species forward. Your mind tries to keep you away from pain and towards pleasure. It responds very well to the pictures and words in your head. And so when you make the pictures and words in your head good, your mind responds incredibly. Your mind is really designed to be very efficient, and that's why we repeat patterns, and that's why habits can be so fun to break. I'll put fun in quotes. And the mind doesn't know the difference between real or imagined things. So knowing this, we can use it to our advantage, and that's the good news. But a lot of times we let our magic atrophy because we get comfortable in old patterns. But we can see this as actually a gift, and we can use it as a time of transformation. Because I always say discomfort is the currency, and that's where it produces change. So, if nothing happens, then nothing happens. So what change is totally up to us. And I've always said it's in our ability to make a decision, and that's where our power comes. So literally the word decision means to cut off all possibility. So it's like the metaphor, you've all heard it, of dissolving, the caterpillar to the butterfly. The caterpillar literally has to physically dissolve. So one of the things I love is your mind loves to answer questions. And I would say use it and ask yourself different questions. But one of the keys is you have to look at the quality of your question. Because if you give your mind a junky question, it will give you junky answers. For example, if you say, why does this always happen to me? We want to elevate. So we want to say, what could I become from this? Or how is this happening for me? Because, we're either growing or we're decaying. So the question always becomes, especially in this time right now, with our, with what's going on, the pandemic, we can use our minds really proactively and say, how can I use this time? Maybe what do I need this time for? Maybe what do I need to learn about myself? How do I want to emerge from this metaphorically? How can I use this to become stronger? And what is it that's bringing up for me that needs to be like loved on? So I always, tell people to think about it if this is a story, because this is a story that we're going to be telling into the future generations. And so when you say it, like I remember the pandemic of 2020. I mean, do you want to be like telling the story of what you binge watched on Netflix, or how do you want to use the time? Do you tell that story now? How do you want to emerge? Do you want to learn a skill? Do you want to read? Because the reality is we can only control how we think, how we feel. All other circumstances are completely beyond our control, and that's the truth. That's the reality. But again, when we take responsibility, and what I mean is radical personal responsibility, and somebody might say, well, how can I take responsibility for this? It's not my fault we're having a pandemic. But what I mean here is your ability to respond. So you can decide, and that's again, your power is in your decision. What are you going to commit to? What are you going to focus on? And so there's a formula that I always like when I write it out on paper when I have an issue. You write down, and I'm sure you've heard this, there's a circumstance. Okay, so you have a circumstance which is an indisputable event, right? So we have a virus. Okay, that is a circumstance. There's a virus. And really, in and of itself, this virus is neutral, right? But then we have a thought about the virus. And here's the thing, is that without the thought, there's nothing. And here's the truth. The truth is that literally 150,000 people worldwide die every day. And without this pandemic, we don't even think about that. But now we're super focused on that. And so then there will be a feeling that comes from the thought. And mostly, in everybody I know, mostly it's fear and anxiety. And that produces an action or an inaction and a behavior. So the action can be, think about it. Some people might, overeat or overdrink, or maybe the action is to watch TV, or perhaps maybe it's in an inaction where they're almost paralyzed. But that particular action is going to determine the behavior that will give us the result. So, if you really want to use your mind and work it backwards, start off with, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel about this experience? And I know it's kind of a crazy thing to say, but how do I want to feel about this particular time that we have? And what do you need to think? What thoughts do you need to pull in order to have that feeling? So for me, when we went into this, I was like, okay, wow, I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel really proud of myself. I want to really feel empowered. I want to come out of this stronger. I want to be super resilient. So, okay, I thought, what thoughts do I have to think? Okay, I'm grateful for this time. I'm choosing to become more. I've got this. It's like, if I can do my best in these hard times, there's no stopping me, and I thought, boy, we have time. How many people have just wanted time? You've seen those memes where it says, for everybody who wished the weekend was longer, it's really longer. So, your actions, my actions, I'm committing to drinking, at least 2 liters of water a day. I'm eating, good food. I'm just not having any junk food in the house. I'm not consuming a lot of news. I'm feeding my mind good things, because your mind is all about what you feed it. So, this is really a plot twist, because there's really, never been anything like this. And it's very, very, very unfamiliar. And does your mind like familiar or unfamiliar? Yeah. So it's like, I was laughing the other day. I thought, boy, the universe is really not cooperating with my vision board. And I have a friend who is a EMT, and she actually decided to join FEMA, and she's in New York City right now. She's been there a couple weeks. And what's really fascinating, we know what PTSD is. right? Post-traumatic syndrome. And I realized, I was talking to her just before she left, and what she's experiencing is pre-PTSD. So it's like pre-trauma. It's like all the thoughts, all the anticipation of the fear. She's anticipating getting sick. The thoughts of, will I get it? How bad is it? Can I handle it? It's like all the what ifs in the world. And so the mind is doing this because it wants to keep you safe. But nonetheless, it is the perfect misuse of imagination. You know, it's like you're having the stress ahead of time. So I'm feeling like, you know, for us, we're going to be dealing with this pre-PTSD, you know, because you're not even there yet. So just like, you know, we anticipate Christmas and summer vacations, it's the complete total opposite. And I said to her, I said, this gives you the perfect opportunity to manage your mind. So we started doing some work together, and I said, let's just allow the thoughts, because the thoughts are normal, they're natural, they're part of it. But let's give some equal time to what you know, like in your belly, in your bones, to be true. So we had the conversation of how can I feel what I'm feeling without shutting down? So I had her include and acknowledge both sides. You know, don't deny the scary stuff. Don't pretend it doesn't exist, because it's your mind trying to do what it's doing. It's trying to be natural. So statements like, I'm scared and I want to contribute. I'm going to be exhausted and I know I'm strong. I'm freaking out and I want to help. I can be worried and I can be available to help. I'm afraid of getting sick and I know I'll get through it. So when we acknowledge that it's normal and necessary for our minds to go into worst case scenarios, because it's designed to protect you, it's doing its job. But then we realize the power of our imagination can either traumatize us or heal us. So I always say, pay attention to your mind, use it the best way possible, because your mind loves getting direction. And if you do this, if you can take this and use it, you're going to build some really tremendous skills. And really, there is a lot of opportunity in every perceived disaster.
And that is gold. I hope
Yeah.
everybody listening to this pauses and rewinds and listens to everything that Nancy just said again. Grab a pen and paper and write out that formula that she mentioned, the circumstance, the thoughts, the feeling, the actions, questions that you have for yourself, observations that you have for yourself, and coming into it from that backwards approach, just how she shared the example of the friend, I think it was,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
that you kind of walked through, and she's having a pre-PTSD response. I
Mm-hmm.
think all of those things are so incredibly helpful to really stop and pay attention to what is happening in your mind, but then also feed it something that is more truth oriented too. Yes, this
Mm-hmm.
might be a truth that's contributing to fear, but here's these other possibilities
Right.
as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So,
Give it equal time.
yeah.
Don't just run the drama.
Incredible. So great.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I'm glad.
Good, good. Do you have anything more to add in terms of Mind 101?
You know, again, it goes back to a lot of your coping strategies. Like, what was it when you grew up? Those patterns are really ingrained in us. And I think it's just really about being willing to observe them, and being willing to observe it with curiosity, you know, and being kind to yourself.
How do you recommend people observe this
Oh,
pattern if it's something that they're not familiar with or not already
well, if you're
doing?
just,
What's something that they can do to make it maybe
so
a
one of
little
the
bit more
things,
easy and not continue to go into pattern?
right, because you're not gonna, you know, you can't beat yourself enough into healing. So for me, I love adopting curiosity, and so I'll say, wow, isn't it interesting? There I go again, doing that thing that I said I didn't want to do. And so I wonder why I'm doing that. So I really feel like, you know, again, your mind loves to answer questions, and it really can give you a lot of amazing answers. And now we have the perfect opportunity, because we're slowing down. We're not super distracted. Journaling, you know, a good way to do it is, my mind says, but I say, and then you write it out. You know, my mind says I'm overeating, but I say, oh, I'm just nervous and I'm afraid. And okay, what can I do with that? I can create some thoughts. I've got this. I'm strong. I'm resilient. I've gotten through a lot of things. I can do this. So your mind loves to hear you speak. Just do it more intentionally.
Yeah. Awesome. So great, Nancy. All right. Well, I think we have covered a lot of really great things. Again, to those listening, I encourage you to rewind and re-listen to these last, I don't know, was that maybe 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes, because there is just a giant gold nugget in everything that Nancy just shared with you. And going through those very simple questions might actually not feel so simple, but it might end up being a lot more simple than what it feels, what that thought is telling you that it might be. And it has the power to dramatically shift the way that you are experiencing what's happening right now, or other things that are going on in your life too. So
yeah, and just know your mind just wants to protect you. That's it.
Yeah. So Nancy, are there any things that you are offering in terms of like group classes that people might want to connect to? I don't know if you've got anything coming up in the next few months or something that you do have planned online right now.
I'm just doing one-on-ones. I feel like I'm better. I can give more attention to people, more one-on-one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I always offer a complimentary session to see if we're a good fit, just, to see if I can help them. And I'm really honest with people. If I think I can help you, yes. If I don't, then I will say,
Yeah. What's the best way to get a hold of you? What's your
probably
business name?
NancyDespres.com is my website.
Okay. Despres.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
And then of course your first name is Nancy. Okay. I will add a link in the notes below this as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Good to talk to you.
Yeah, so great to talk to you too.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, if you would like to donate to this episode, all the proceeds will be split 50-50 between Nancy and I. You can do so through Venmo. My details are kara-mcnabb, KARA-MCNABB, or through PayPal. And that's my email address. Again, kara-mcnabb@gmail.com. And if you can donate $1 or you could donate $20,000, that would be very helpful.
Right.
For so many of us, as we go through this series, who might be experiencing some financial downturn because of what's happening for everybody else as well. So thank you for tuning in. And if you are interested in taking part in this podcast or video cast, I guess, please connect with me and I'd love to set something up. If you have any ideas for what you would like to learn more about or hear more about, please send those my way too. All right. Thank you for tuning in. Nancy, thank you so much for
Thank you, Kara. This
hanging
was
out
fun
with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. It was fun.
Okay. See you later.